Okay. Let us continue with this. Part 8. Ferdinand's estate. It was the day of our trip, and we Archduke candidates were traveling by carriage. This is my first time going to Uncle's estate, Wilfred said. Have you been here before, Rosamine? I shook my head. No, this is my first time as well. We normally conduct our business in the castle or the temple. This is my first time being invited outside of the castle, so I'm a bit nervous, Melkor admitted, though he seemed openly excited as he gazed out the window. Although traveling by carriage was slower than the alternatives I was used to, Ferdinand's estate was right next to the castle, so the journey didn't take very long at all. We arrived in the blink of an eye. Ferdinand certainly lives in a big estate, considering that he's not even married, I said as I alighted from the carriage, looking up at the massive white mansion that greeted us. In terms of size, it wasn't that much different from Karstad's estate. It being abandoned was such a waste. Wilfred shrugged in response, having stepped out of the carriage before me. All Archduke candidates leave the northern building once they come of age. He must have been given this place under the assumption that he'd marry right after graduating. I doubt grandfather expected that uncle would remain unattached this late into his life. It was then the door to the estate opened, revealing none other than Fran. Please do come in, he said, welcoming us inside. Fran, why are you here, Wilfred and Charlotte asked. Surprised to see a temple attendant and an estate in the noble's quarter. They knew Fran from my 2-year slumber when he had accompanied them for spring prayer and the harvest festival. Upon seeing the 2 Archduke candidates frozen in place, Fran directed a troubled smile in my direction. I took that as a signal for me to explain. Ferdinand has spent so much time in the temple that his estate barely has any attendants and service, I said. He has so many visitors today that Fran and Zom have agreed to help, having once served as his attendants. Wilfrid, Charlotte, and Melkor's retainers all seem to accept this explanation. Lord Ferdinand will soon be leaving for Arensbach, Charlotte noted. So I suppose there would not be much point in him taking on more personnel now. Especially when he's going to be spending his remaining time in Ehrenfest in the temple training his successors out of Vanessa, her head attendant. Please keep it a secret from Lady Detlinde that those working here are temple attendants, I said. I don't imagine she will respond positively. Everyone nodded their understanding. As we made our way inside, I noticed many more similarities to Karstad's estate. At the same time, however, the interior was very distinctively Ferdinand. That is to say, one could tell at a glance that a woman had never so much as touched it before. It was simple, practical, and entirely lacking in decoration. In a way, it kind of resembled Dunkelfelger's tea party room. Ferdinand noticed our arrival and turned around, having been instructing the attendants in the parlor. Ah, there you are. Your estate truly is bare, Ferdinand. You simply do not understand the beauty of practicality. Yeah. Best not to waste money on decorations that you don't even want. We passed through the entrance hall and were taken into a sizable parlor that seemed a lot more inviting, largely owing to the many tables, chairs, benches, rugs, and important magic tools. Zom brought in some sweets, working under the instruction of someone who appeared to be the noble attendant usually in charge of the estate. We sipped tea while the final checks were made before Detlinde's arrival. This room is the only one you may eat and drink within, Ferdinand said. Once the Gilberta company arrives, I intend to take Raymond and the other male scholars to my book room for a research meeting. No way, I muttered, my interest piqued. The idea of a research meeting with Raymond was my own suggestion, but this was the first time I was hearing about it being held in a book room. I want to come too. You offered to host Detlinde and discuss hairpins, trends, and such with her, did you not? So I'm expected to suffer knowing that your book room is just outside my reach? That was mine. Jesus Christ. Denying me access to a treasure trove of new books that I'd most likely never have another opportunity to visit was the height of cruelty. Oh, I wish I were a man just for today. Wilfred, can we exchange clothes? That won't help you, Wilfred replied. I know that deep down. A girl can dream, though. He didn't even say, what the fuck, Rosamine? I guess he's used to this sort of thing. After witnessing my desperation, Brunhilde suddenly clenched a fist and said, Lord Ferdinand, may I offer a few words of advice? Go ahead. Having men and women socialize in separate locations is by no means uncommon, but as the goal of the socializing is for you to deepen your bonds with your fiancé, it would not be wise for the two of you to remain apart. Lazletta nodded in agreement. Perhaps you could leave the doors to the parlor and your book room open such that your guests can move between them as they please? Such transparency will only work to your advantage, as being able to see her fiancé will put Lady Detlinde at greater ease. Charlotte fell into thought for a moment, then looked at me and smiled. Still, Lady Detlinde may be hesitant to enter a room without any other women present. We could avoid causing her any unnecessary discomfort by having Rosamund stay in the book room and read for the duration of our visit. Oh, Charlotte, you're an angel. Are you not being too soft on Rosamund? Ferdinand asked. Not by any conscious effort, Charlotte replied with a concerned smile. I simply do not think we should trust Rosamund with socializing while she is so fixated on your book room. Were you hosting Aurelia, who is more open to discussions about books, then this caution wouldn't be necessary, but Lady Detlinde does not share this interest. Brunhilde and Lysletta nodded in agreement, then they both puffed out their chests. We are used to hosting others while Lady Rosamund is absent, so you may entrust this to us, Lord Ferdinand. In other words, Rosamund's shifted motivation makes her dead weight, which is why we should put her in the book room to begin with, Ferdinand said. I see the logic. Indeed, it is impossible to say what Rosamund might do when books are involved, so the most peaceful solution is to distance her from the start. I shot my head up at once. Everyone was labeling me as useless. I can't let this stand. Melkor is here. I need to show him that I'm a competent big sister. Wait just a moment, I said. I'll focus on socializing. After all, I'm already resolved to do everything I can to help Ferdinand. No, you would do well to stay within the book room, Ferdinand replied. Perhaps because of your tendency to cause problems at the Royal Academy, those around you all seem a lot more dependable. I feel safest putting this matter in their hands. I don't know whether I should celebrate that Ferdinand is willing to trust other people, or weep at the reality that I'm proving entirely useless here. I'd say both. As I fell into thought, Ferdinand made his way to a nearby door and unlocked it with the turn of a key. An attendant then stepped forward without missing a beat and opened the door fully to reveal the room beyond. Rosamund, this is my book room. On my way! All thoughts of my promise to help went out the window as I rushed over to the open door. Through it, I could see rows and rows of shelves, all neatly lined with books. There was far more reading material here than in Karstadt's estate. In fact, there was more than I would expect any one person to own. My, what a magnificent book room. You never let me down, Ferdinand. Praise be to the gods. I exclaimed, showering the area with the light of a blessing. Before I could charge inside, however, Ferdinand grabbed me by the collar. Fool, you will enter only after the Gilberta Company has arrived and we have discussed the hairpin. Then why are you showing it to me now? Are you trying to hurt me? I had a feeling that in your excitement you would unleash a blessing the very moment you laid eyes on my book room. My prediction was entirely correct. I put my head in my hands, regretting my spur-of-the-moment prayer, while Wilfrid started nodding to himself. I see, he said. Rosamund is very likely to give a blessing when seeing a new book room. Yes, you would do well to note that while dissolving her mana clubs reduce the rate at which she collapses, it has simultaneously increased the rate at which she expends blessings. Stop! Nobody write that down! Too late! It's written down! Oh, I love this book. I love this series. I just hate that Ferdinand's leaving. Lord Ferdinand, carriages have just arrived in attendance and have seen that Lady Detlinde is here. Ferdinand made for the entrance hall, and we followed to welcome Detlinde. My first observation was that her retainers were all women, presumably because she was here to pick a hairpin. Raymond was also with them, as per Ferdinand's request. He was trailing behind, looking very small and uncomfortable. After exchanging greetings at the entrance hall, we moved to the parlor to have tea. Thanks to some very careful probing by Justice, we had managed to prepare, and were now serving Detlinde's preferred sweets. We had not only honey pound cake, but also ice cream, which was perfect for the summer months and superbly chilled from the ice room magic tool we had used to store it. This cold sweet is quite delicious, Detlinde said, sounding very content. Ice cream is a summer sweet, so it doesn't get served at the Royal Academy, I exclaimed. I explained with a smile. I am glad you like it, Lady Detlinde. Indeed, she replied, smiling in turn. I quite like it. Could we perhaps bring the chef responsible to Arensbach with us? Unfortunately, Arensbach ingredients are nothing like those found in Ehrenfest, Ferdinand said. There is no point in me bringing my chefs, as they are unlikely to be able to make the same recipes in another duchy. Plus, would it not be strange for me to bring my chefs to Arensbach when Aurelia brought none to Ehrenfest? Detlinde blinked her green eyes several times before then turned and stared up at her attendant. Martina, is it true that Aurelia brought no chefs to Ehrenfest? It is, Martina replied, speaking as Aurelia's little sister. I never expected that she wouldn't be allowed one. I clamped my hands together in a realization. Aurelia's magic tool of Arensbach ingredients made a lot more sense if she had been expected to have chefs accompanying her. Ah, so that's why her magic tool only contained the ingredients, I said. Aurelia was very surprised when she found out. She even felt quite down, thinking it was an act of malice. But in relief to know that that was not the case. Martina linked her fingers in front of her chest and shook her head so dramatically that it was almost comical. We would never do anything so mean, she said. Does this mean our sister hasn't been able to eat any of our duchy's food since arriving in Ehrenfest? I would very much like to share some with her if possible. Don't worry, we have chefs capable of making Ahrensbach food, so we prepared the fish Aurelia brought and cooked it as intended. She was quite pleased with the results. I was trying to convey that we were treating Aurelia well, but Martina's expression instead clouded over. Lady Rosemine, I would like to use this opportunity to visit my sister, but her husband is not permitting us to meet. Her partner serves Lord Wolfrey, does it not? Detlinde asked, resting a hand against her cheek. Lady Rosemine, could your brother and Lord Ferdinand perhaps speak to him? I just feel so terrible for Martina. I glanced at Wolfred, who slowly shook his head and replied, I'm afraid I can't do that. Oh my, why ever not? Martina is so concerned for her sister. I'm told that Aurelia personally refused the idea, not to mention she lives in the Knight Commander's estate and her husband is my retainer. We can't permit the meeting due to the risk of our duchy's secrets being leaked, Wolfred explained, flatly refusing to budge. Oh, God. Detlinde slumped over, looking dejected, then turned to Ferdinand with tearful eyes. Lord Ferdinand, please hear my desire. Unfortunately, this is a decision for Wolfred to make as Lampert's lord. I dearly aspire to grant any wish you may have, but this is outside of my control, Ferdinand replied, his kind smile betraying traces of regret as though he actually felt bad. It seems my fiancé is like Aberglaive in the spring, Detlinde said with a sigh. I am truly sorry for Martina. Excuse me? You're going to call Ferdinand useless because he refuses to force a meeting that Aurelia herself doesn't want. There are some things Archducal family members from other duchies just shouldn't encroach upon. Ferdinand and I met with this response with equally broad smiles, and once again I saw justice holding Egbert back. He was right to do so, but a small part of me wanted to give Egbert the go-ahead. What would he have done had he let him do the go-ahead? I don't know what the heck he would have done. Because he wouldn't have smacked her. I wonder if he would have just said something rude. I don't know. Martina hurriedly put a hand on Detlinde's shoulder, having noticed the mounting tension in the room. The unease was only momentary, however. Zomson appeared and said, Lord Ferdinand, the Gilberta Company is here. Shall we let them in? His announcement cleared the air at once. Truly our saviors had arrived. Otto, Karina, and a woman I didn't recognize entered the room before long. The unfamiliar figure was presumably one of the increasingly talented hairpin craftswomen. Her hair was bundled, but judging by how young she looked, I presume she was only a few years past her coming of age ceremony. May the serendipitous meeting ordained by the vibrant summer rays of Leidenschaft, the god of fire, be blessed by the gods. After exchanging the usual greetings, we jumped straight into talks about the hairpin. Brunhilde seamlessly waved in and out of the conversation, such that the commoner craftswoman only had to speak when absolutely necessary. First, we shall ask for your preference, Lady Detlinde, Brunhilde said. Have you ordered clothes for your graduation ceremony? If so, what color might they be? Do you have any preferred flowers? She was utilizing all the talents she had developed while ordering so many hairpins, and even overseeing the ones for Eglantine and Adolphine. Charlotte noted that she wanted to order a hairpin as well, while Melchior watched the discussion about this new thing with sparkling eyes. After confirming that the atmosphere in the parlor was likely to stay calm, Ferdinand smoothly rose to his feet and said, Lady Detlinde, please take your time and choose whatever your heart desires. Women tend to take some time when shopping, so I will wait in the book room next door. Come, Raymond. Yes, Lord Ferdinand, Raymond replied. He was the only Ahrensbach visitor to move for the book room. I shall go as well, then, I said. Judith, Angelica, wait here if you would. I made my way into the book room at once with Cornelius, Samuel, Lenore, and my scholars in tow, then sighed with bliss. Hartmut, Feline, Roderick, start preparing a registry of all the books here. One already exists, Ferdinand replied. If you are looking for material you have not read before, I would recommend starting with this shelf. This one contains books transcribed from the Royal Library, and that one holds books I have already lent you. You're as on top of things as ever, Ferdinand. I was rejoicing to no end while Ferdinand shot me a clear grimace. Rosemine, your reading time may begin only once my conversation with Raymond about magic tools is over. You would prolong my suffering? This is something that you yourself requested, so yes. Raymond reached into his bag and pulled out 2 medium-sized pieces of cloth, looking tense all the while. They were experimental versions of the phase stones-assisted low-energy magic circles, and Ferdinand wasted no time in looking them over. The ingredients I was able to prepare weren't of a particularly high quality, so, indeed, Ferdinand said, we could have further reduced the mana cost had we used the ingredients I have on hand. Still, the magic circles themselves are well made. This praise made Raymond smile, then his expression turned more quizzical. Lord Ferdinand, can I ask what you intend to do with these magic circles? They're quite limited to the size of what they can send, so I'm not sure what use they can serve. Rosemond wanted them for transporting books, Ferdinand replied. Raymond eyed the nearby books, no doubt concerned about their thickness. Of course, Ehrenfest's books were thin and used Japanese binding materials, so I didn't expect them to be a problem. Let us try a volume, I said, spreading out both teleportation circles and sanding a piece of paper on top one. I touched and channeled mana into the circle, and a moment later the paper appeared on the other. The process had barely taken any mana. Ferdinand, that required so little mana that it might as well not have taken any, I observed. Can we try a book next? He paused for a moment and then said, "Half Feline or Daniel send it. We need to know whether a lay noble can use these circles as well, but we cannot determine this with you as our test subject." I did as instructed and asked my 2 lay noble retainers to try sending books and paper, testing the limits of what they could send and the amount of mana it required. Interestingly enough, they were able to send one of Ferdinand's thick books, but not another. The mana cost varies depending on the size and weight of what's being sent, Feline and Daniel summarized after extensively experimenting for me. An average lay noble should be able to use it 10 or so times before being on the verge of running out of mana. Extended periods of work won't be feasible without rejuvenation potions. In short, this system was well suited for delivering books as per my book deposit system, and it wouldn't take much mana either. I was sure it could serve as work for people like Conrad and Dirk in the future. Raymond, I wish to purchase this magic circle, I said. May I? His face blossomed with overjoyed surprise, but then his eyes settled on Ferdinand with worry, and worry tinged his expression. It would be an honor for you to buy a magic tool of my creation, but is that acceptable? I needed guidance from Lord Ferdinand to finish it, so it should naturally be his to... Do not concern yourself with that, Ferdinand said, interrupting him. You are the one who actually realized the idea. And so it stands, I have no need for fame or fortune. You may treat it as your own. It wasn't at all rare for teachers to take credit for their disciples' creations. I wonder aloud whether Hersha was doing this herself, but she didn't seem to have a particular desire for fame either. All she desired to do was seek new knowledge and make new things. Hersha has even been known to ask her disciples for funding and ingredients when she deems it necessary for her research, Ferdinand noted. Also that they become strong-willed enough to refuse others. That said, Raymond, there is no need for you to worry. She would doubtless come to leech off of me rather than someone as poor as yourself. I chuckled. It was easy to imagine Hersha doing that. Your next task is to modify sound recording magic tools to be smaller, Ferdinand said. Here is a blueprint. I would like them to be finished before Ferdinand leaves for Ahrensbach. Is that feasible, I asked, and started explaining all that I wanted the magic tool to be capable of. It will ideally be openable by a switch, and fully capable of delivering my chastising remarks. Raymond and even Hartmut peered at the blueprint with interest. If you intend to record long messages, then I will need face stones and magic tools to match. Raymond said, if you only want a single sentence, though, it shouldn't be too hard. Remember that it must be capable of playing the recording an infinite number of times, Ferdinand warned. One that only lasts so many uses is not good enough. Raymond and again Hartmut frowned at this news. For something to replay the same recording an infinite number of times, a magic circle will need to be added just for preservation. In turn, this limits how small we can make the tool. You may learn from the protective circles on Schwartz and Weiss, Ferdinand said offhandedly while looking at the blueprints. Raymond and Hartmut stared at him. So, to summarize, you want us to isolate the preservation magic circles used for the 2 stew meals and attach one to a phrase, all while using only a single face stone to keep the size and mana cost to a minimum. They both asked. I could tell from the looks on their faces that they understood exactly what he wanted, though I couldn't even begin to imagine how they worked that out from what was essentially a hint. Okay, I'm not sure I'll manage to come first in class for the scholar course after all. I was starting to get nervous, but Ferdinand set down a book in front of me and said, That will do, you may read now. All of my concerns vanished in an instant, and after asking Roderick to open the heavy cover for me, I started to read. Once immersed in the text, the sounds around me began to fade into the distance. Rosemine, it is time. I was brought back to reality by Ferdinand's deep voice, and the book in front of me was promptly shut. The hairpin order had long since concluded, and both Detlinde and the Gilberta Company had already left. If you do not return soon, you will miss dinner and receive a scolding from Riarda, Ferdinand warned. My attendants made all the necessary preparations for my return to the castle, then we hurried into our carriages. Once we were inside, Ferdinand looked at us all and said, Wilfried, Charlotte, Rosamond, you and your retainers hosted Lady Detlinde today with the utmost skill. You have shown much growth, and seeing this has brought me some relief. Continue to strive for great heights. Wilfrid and Charlotte smiled in response as they waved at Ferdinand as our carriages began moving toward the castle. To our surprise, our hairpin meeting ended up being our only personal encounter with Detlinde. She had intended to stay in Ehrenfest for longer, but an urgent message had arrived from Ahrensbach, forcing her and Georgine to hurry back. I pray that you live well with the divine protection of the gods until Dragana, the goddess of time, weaves the threads of our fates together once again. Indeed, I pray that her weaving is smooth and swift. But those of us from Ehrenfest have given the traditional and innocuous farewell, meaning we hope that we one day meet again. Georgine's crimson lips had curled into a grin at this, and she had chosen a response that meant we shall meet again soon enough. The epilogue. Oh. Okay, this is what I think. I'm guessing this is Detlinde's point of view or something, or it's following them back. I mean, several joint carriages drove away from Ehrenfest's lower city and along a road through trees and fields, heading towards Ahrensbach in the south. Magic tools were being used to reduce the shaking, but there was no stopping it once they had moved beyond the smooth stone paving of the city. The carriages were adorned with Ahrensbach's crest. They belonged to Georgine, Detlinde, and their group, who were returning home after receiving urgent news of the Archduke's collapse. Oh, great! Actually, Justice's information was right. Huh. After confirming that the scenery was bland and repetitive, Detlinde returned her attention to the inside of her carriage. Sitting alongside her were Martina, her apprentice attendant, Georgine, her mother, and Seltier, her mother's attendant. Excuse me. How unfortunate, Detlinde said, to think we have to return so soon. Upon her return to Ahrensbach, Detlinde would need to endure having lots of work forced on her, and countless retainers who were irritatingly insistent on her studying. She was under watch at all times, meaning she couldn't relax. Only when she was at the Royal Academy did things go her way, since there was nobody above her there. Is that not a very cold remark, milady? Seltier asked. Ahrensbach, your own father, has collapsed with illness. Detlinde fell silent at this criticism. The news had certainly come as a surprise to her, but she barely had any memories of seeing her father, let alone being doted on by him. On the few occasions they had met, he had done nothing but chastise her with a look of resentment before ordering her to leave. If she was being cold, then it clearly ran in the family. Yeah, Detlinde's home life isn't very good, but that still doesn't excuse how she acts. I was having ever so much fun in Ehrenfest. Could he not have collapsed at some other time? Detlinde groaned. Everyone in Ehrenfest did as she said, and it felt good to command so much respect. Mother was enjoying herself as well. Perhaps she feels the same I do? Probably. Georgine was staring out the window, making no attempt to stop Seltier's lecture. Father collapsed due to the Sovereign Knight's order, no? Detlinde asked. They had been coming non-stop since spring. I would rather they put an end to antagonizing Ahrensbach with false charges. Knights from the Sovereignty had appeared again and again to investigate Ahrensbach's potential involvement in the Tradition terrorist attack, since Ahrensbach managed old workstock. I mean, what do you think they're gonna assume? If you guys are the ones that are managing that dormitory, of course they're gonna assume that. You mustn't say such things, Lady Detlinde. The Sovereign Knight's order is simply doing its job. My oh my, but we was dealing with them not exceptionally inconvenient while the ships from the Lanzanov were here for summer trade. Mother and father were so busy that I was sent to deal with the knights despite being underage. Detlinde made it clear she believed the Sovereign Knight's order were to blame for her father's sudden collapse. He had supported the king during the Civil War and continued to serve faithfully even after losing his second wife and successors. Yet he was now being accused of aiding a rebel attack. His pride as an archduke had consequently been wounded, which must have placed a heavy burden on his heart. How dare the king doubt Ahrensbach, Detlinde continued. It is so irritating that I find myself disgusted. Don't you agree, mother? Georgine slightly narrowed her dark green eyes in response, her crimson lips painting an arch. Given that Fabies from old workstock were involved in the attack, the king has no choice but to investigate us. She's not wrong. It certainly has put a strain on us, but now we are closer with the sovereignty, and the Knights Commander has said that their suspicions were cleared, no? It was well worth providing our assistance. Personally, I consider all this to signify the fulfilling of Forcente's basket. What the heck is Forcente's basket? Don't ask me. To Georgine, their incident with the Sovereign Knight's Order was beneficial enough to be considered a blessing from the goddess of harvest. Okay, that's what that was. Detlinde vehemently disagreed. She had only suffered from it. After all, I'm going to be the next Ob Ahrensbach. Ahrensbach had 2 Archduke candidates, Detlinde and Letzia, but the latter was so young that she hadn't even entered the Royal Academy. One had to be of age to become an Ob, so the current Archduke's illness will most likely result in Detlinde taking the Archducal seat. And under my circumstances, an Archknight from the Sovereignty certainly wouldn't make a suitable partner for me. Archduchess absolutely needed to marry someone who had graduated from the Royal Academy as an Archduke candidate, as such men were expected to take on the duties of an Ob while the Archduchess was pregnant. In other words, no matter how wonderful the man who fell for her were, she could not respond to their feelings. She recalled the young sovereign knight who had so passionately approached her and sighed. So essentially, she had gotten the attention of a sovereign knight, and because of all this going on with her possibly becoming the next Archduchess of Ahrensbach, she can't even respond to it, which sucks. She could have found someone good. But no! Because of the stupid rules, she couldn't do it. It had been springtime after the Royal Academy term had come to an end, but before the Archduke Conference. Ahrensbach had received a visit from the Sovereign Knight's Order, whereupon Detlinde had formed a romantic relationship with one of the knights. They had met practically every day, and she had enjoyed the feeling as they slowly grew closer and closer, but that love had met its end in the blink of an eye. Detlinde's engagement had abruptly been decided during the Archduke Conference, meaning she had needed to break up with the knight. And then there's the person they engaged me to. The man selected to be Detlinde's partner was much older than she and from a duchy ranked below Ahrensbach. He also continued to visit the temple despite having returned to noble society. And although he was a member of the Ehrenfest Archducal family, he had no mother. His lineage and circumstances are rife with problems, but oh well. He was rather attractive. His smile was so kind as his demeanor was soft, and everyone described him as being exceedingly competent. Such an intelligent man surely understood the situation he was in. He would no doubt admire Detlinde for saving him from the temple, offer his heartfelt affection. That's a big fat booty lie right there. And strive to support her as she rose to become the next Archduchess. After her experiences with her father, who always barked orders with the sourest expression, Detlinde was glad to have a man who could act according to her will. Oh, shut it. You are not the main character here, girl. Not to mention the Ehrenfest nobles had said that Ferdinand was pulling Rosemine's strings from the shadows and using her to spread various trends. Trends that would rightly belong to Ahrensbach once he married into the duchy. That is not true right there. You're going to find that out pretty darn quick, that those trends are not his. Detlinde felt a very satisfied smile creep onto her lips as she thought about all the praise Ehrenfest was receiving at the Royal Academy being redirected to her. Plus, I shall soon have a hairpin of my very own. This made her even more pleased. The Ehrenfest hairpin she had wanted would soon be hers. She wished to stand in front of Adolphine, who had shamed her in the Royal Academy last year, and show her the ultimate hairpin she had designed herself. It was a shame that the young woman had since graduated. Still, perhaps she will do as Lady Eglantine did and come to the Interduchy tournament as Prince Sigiswald's betrothed. That possibility was displeasing in its own way, though. Adolphine was engaged to the first prince, while Detlinde was engaged to an Archducal family member from Ehrenfest, neither a greater duchy nor a top-ranking one. She felt as though she had somehow lost as a woman. Oh, pooh-hoo-hoo. Putting all that aside, what manner of hairpin has been ordered, Georgine asked, looking not at Detlinde but at her apprentice Martina. We were operating separately that day. Right, Martina said, eyeing her lady carefully. Lord Ferdinand's estate is close to the castle, and only the minimum number of attendants are kept there. It was bare of decoration, and it seemed that he does not have any regular female visitors. If any at all. Well, of course he wouldn't. It felt as though Lady Rosamund and the others had received invitations only to host Lady Detlinde. She went on to describe how Ferdinand had joined them for tea only briefly, electing to bring Raymond, Rosamund, and the scholars to the book room where the hairpin craftspeople arrived. Now, Martina, did Mother not ask specifically about my hairpin? Detlinde said, pointing out that her apprentice's answer hadn't at all matched the question. She then spoke at length about the hairpin she had ordered, explaining that she had deliberately ensured that it would be much fancier and more beautiful than the one Adolphine had worn. Georgine paused for a moment and then said, "You ordered it according to your own specifications, Ditlinde?" "Indeed I did. I know far more about what suits me than Lord Ferdinand does." "Well, yeah, would assume, especially since he don't care." Ditlinde replied, puffing out her chest. In her eyes, it was only natural that she couldn't trust her fiancé's tastes and sensibilities so soon after their engagement. I have to agree on that one, especially since it's Ferdinand. Nothing against Ferdinand, he just doesn't care. Well, at least about Ditlinde, anyway. Lady Ditlinde did order it according to her own specifications, Martina added, her focus devoted entirely to Georgine. But as Lady Rosemine's retainers and Lady Charlotte were there to give advice, there was nothing to worry about. "Pray tell, what reason might she have to worry in the first place?" Ditlinde asked. Georgine merely waved a hand in response, seeming to have lost all interest in the matter. "That is enough," she said, returning her attention to the bland scenery outside the window. The carriage rumbled along until it arrived outside an inn located in the plaza of a nearby city where Georgine and Ditlinde intended to stay the night. Half a day had passed since their hurried departure from Ehrenfest. Ditlinde was aware that the inn they were patronizing accommodated nobles as well as regular citizens, but the food served there was nothing like the fashionable meals they usually ate at the castle. It was a disappointing truth, and one that brought with it a stark realization. No matter how much Ehrenfest dressed itself up at the Royal Academy, it was still a backwater duchy through and through. She couldn't help but give a derisive sniff. Bitch. Just because it's not like it is at the Royal Academy or at the Ehrenfest Castle does not mean that all these trends have not spread out through the city yet. Or what is a duchy? Because it seems like Jürgen Smith's the country, all the other all the duchies, Dunkelfelder, Drwonkel, Ehrenfest, Ehrensbach, are all cities. So, what does that make the, Groschel, Haldensale? What is all that? Is that I don't get it. Can somebody explain it to me, please? Or actually, now that I think about it, it seems like it's more of a country and all the... Now that I think about it, I might have figured it out. Ehrensbach, Ehrenfest, and all that are like states. Whereas Haldensale, Groschel, and everything are like cities. Like in the U.S. That's what I'm thinking of anyway. If I'm wrong, let me know. "Given the urgency of the situation, we will travel by high beast from tomorrow onward," Georgine said. "The carriages with our belongings may travel more leisurely, and we shall teleport the belongings we will need on the road." "That sounds reasonable enough," Seltzer replied. "I expect there to be word from the border gate if something happens." They hadn't mounted their high beast from the very beginning of their return journey because of the barrier that surrounded cities within an Archduke's castle. Traveling by carriage was the only option for nobles from a foreign duchy such as Ditlinde and the others. Furthermore, as they had worn formal clothing when saying their farewells, departing by high beast would have required them to change into riding attire. "Do we not have too few guard knights for that? It would greatly inconvenience the Gebe we are staying with if we brought too many guests to his mansion. This is all very sudden, you know." Georgine and the others were discussing their plans for tomorrow, but Ditlinde ignored them, focusing instead on her cup of tea. She knew that her mother would make all the decisions, and that there was no point in attempting to contribute. Not once had anything Ditlinde suggested ever been respected or attempted. It seemed foolish to pay any mind to the conversation when she knew that her input would immediately be disregarded. I cannot talk right. "Lady Ditlinde, if you would..." Seltzer refreshed Ditlinde's tea. This normally would have been a task for Martina, but she was busy preparing bath water. Their being on a trip meant they had fewer attendants than usual. Can't they stop talking already? Ditlinde was exhausted from the incessant rattling of the carriage. She wanted nothing more than to retire to her room and rest. The next morning, Ditlinde awoke feeling no less worried than before she had gone to sleep. This didn't surprise her. As an archducal family member raised in a regal environment, it was only natural that she wouldn't take well to the hard beds of the backwater duchy's inns. After breakfast, Ditlinde recalled their plans for the day while sipping the tea Seltzer had prepared for her. She lamented that they could have reached the border gate within the day if they had only taken their high beast, which would have allowed them to stay in a noble mansion in Ehrensbach. Still, she decided that her complaints could wait until after Ehrenfest was behind them. And it was with this mindset that she put on her riding clothes and prepared to leave without so much as a single negative word to her attendant. The two parties departed from the inn separately, flying their high beasts for about a bell before stopping to rest. They were traveling much faster than usual, so everyone but the knights, already well accustomed to high beast travel, were made to drink rejuvenation potions often. Detlinde appreciated the brief respite. She had thought that she could endure until they reached the border gate, but she was feeling sicker by the moment. Her breathing was quite labored, perhaps due to their haste in travel, and it felt as hot as the height of summer. Lady Detlinde, you seem quite poorly, I must say, Martina exclaimed, having come to see why Detlinde wasn't drinking her rejuvenation potions. Perhaps we should rest. All eyes immediately fell on Detlinde, but she couldn't accede to the idea. Her suffering would only be prolonged if she spent another night in a cheap backwater inn. I am rather delicate, so I imagine the hard beds of the country's inn did me no good, she said, fixing Martina with a glare. A noble estate is just what I need, so let us cross the border gate as soon as we can. How can you make such a suggestion when you look so sickly, Seltzer cried, stopping Detlinde in her tracks. You wish for noble accommodations, do you? The mansion of a Guy from my family is nearby. Let us go there. As it turned out, Seltzer was from Ehrenfest. She had served Georgine before the latter was married into Ahrensbach, which was probably why Georgine valued her so much. It was with these thoughts in mind that Detlinde agreed to visit the noble mansion. That is, if you are fine with this, mother. My, is there a reason I would not be? Your health is far more important than any schedule. Seltzer, send an ordonnance to Grossum at once. As you wish, Lady Georgine. Detlinde was moved. Georgine never usually showed any concern for her health, and it was unprecedented for her to change her plans so suddenly. Detlinde could count on one hand the number of times Georgine had shown any consideration for her well-being, and not forced her to continue working through illness. As she considered whether it was in her best interest to fall sick more often from now on, a reply arrived. This is Grossum, came an apologetic male voice from the Ivory Bird. As much as I desire to accommodate any wish you may have, Lady Georgina, I happen to have visitors today. I can prepare rooms for you and Lady Detlinde, but not all of your entourage. My sincerest apologies, but could you limit your retainers to one attendant and one guard knight each? I will prepare any other staff you might need for the duration of your stay, and recommend an inn for the others in your party. Georgine agreed to this proposal without so much as batting an eye. I suppose we don't have our own circumstances, or both have our own circumstances, she said. Detlinde and I shall oblige you, but I suggest we send the others to rest in Ahrensbach as planned. We cannot demand so much from a Gieb of another duchy. It will also be rude to the Gieb in Ahrensbach, who is so graciously planning to host us tonight. But only one attendant and one guard knight is much too dangerous, came a protest from those gathered. It was unthinkable for members of an archducal family to surrender so much protection in another duchy, but Georgine fixed all those who spoke up with a firm glare. We are staying with Seltzer's family, with whom I am already acquainted. We can trust their attendants and guard knights out, and I will not hear anything to the contrary. Detlinde's health comes first. After looking over the group, Georgine ordered everyone to move at once. Detlinde's body was starting to feel exceedingly heavy, to the point that she struggled to even move her high beast. Georgine instructed her to ride with a female guard knight, and off they went. Welcome, Lady Georgine. We have long awaited your arrival. I shall take you to your rooms at once. Yours is this way. Everyone is ready. Oh? Detlinde looked at Grossum. Despite the fuzziness that was beginning to blanket her mind and cloud her thoughts, she realized that she had seen this man quite recently. He had been among those who had stuck closely to Georgine and Ehrenfest. Why was he here when he had just been in the noble's quarter? Something about this whole situation felt strangely artificial, but perhaps her uneasiness was simply due to her poor health? She struggled to say for sure, disoriented as she was. We shall stay until Detlinde has recovered, Georgine said. I am glad to have this opportunity to strengthen old bonds with you all. The other side worked unexpectedly hard at the noble's quarter. It is a pleasant surprise that we may meet like this without any interference, Lady Georgine, Grossum replied, welcoming her politely. Detlinde couldn't help but think that he was looking at Georgine as one might look at one's master. Is he name sworn to her? Huh. If that's the case, that would make sense. You are annoying. Okay, how long have I been recording for? 38 minutes. Okay. Clearing regrets from 10 years ago. Hi, shits, what's all this fuss about? We were discussing our first dinner game with Lord Ferdinand in almost 10 years, I replied. This earned me a glare from the Knight Commander, but he was the one who had interrupted our impassioned exchange of praise from my opponent. Change of guard. It was the middle of the Archduke Conference, and a discussion between Dunkelfelger and Ahrensbach was being held in Dunkelfelger's tea party room. We guard knights not yet on duty were all packed into a waiting room. Has the discussion about old workstock concluded, I asked, sitting up straight? The biggest concern of this year's Archduke Conference was the rebel attack that had occurred during the Interduchy tournament, with workstock being at the center of it all. Dunkelfelder was managing the old duchy alongside Arensbach, so the Sovereign Knight's Order had opened an inquiry into what we knew about the Turnish Befallens before investigating the provinces where the rebels had once lived. The Order's findings had already been reported at the conference, so discussion was now focused on adjusting their countermeasures based on the thoughts and reactions of other duchies. Even so, the atmosphere in the waiting room was calmer now than it had been when those talks first started. I had gotten a bit carried away myself, but I hadn't forgotten my role here. Old work stock has been covered, but there are many other things to discuss, the Knight Commander said with a hard stare. After all, Prince Hildebrand's engagement to Lady Letzia was announced so soon after his debut. Stay alert. After heeding this warning from the commander, we exited the meeting room. Outside, we met up with the cart-pushing attendants, who were similarly changing places with their co-workers. Prince Hildebrand's formal debut had taken place during this year's Archduke Conference. He was closer to Dunkelfelder than his siblings, owing to the fact that his mother was our own Lady Magdalena, the king's third wife. Henceforth, our duchy would serve as a crucial pillar of support for Prince Hildebrand and negotiate with Arensbach while keeping in line with the sovereignty. This is going to take a while, a knight muttered, looking like he'd rather be doing anything else. I gave a small nod of agreement. It was exhausting beyond words having to remain completely on guard and aware of one's surroundings for extended periods of time. About a decade had passed since the Civil War, and each year more knights blind to this world of surprise attacks and abrupt betrayals joined the Order. Many expressed their wishes to be like the other knights and stand around without a care in the world, but we had no need for statues, especially those who were so eager to embarrass themselves. Excuse me, please allow me to refresh the tea. I entered the tea party room with the attendants and gazed around, asking myself question after question. How many from Arensbach were here? How many people had mana capacities close to my own? Had any dangerous magic tools been brought in during our switch? We measured up the Arensbach guard knights, and they did the same with us. It was something of a standard procedure for both sides. After scanning the room for enemies, I turned my attention to Arensbach's archducal couple. There was a significant age gap between Ob Arensbach and his first wife, Lady Georgine. This had blown me away when they first attended the Archduke Conference together, but I was very much used to it by now. Now, as we know, the engagement between Prince Hildebrand and Lady Letzia was announced, began Lady Segonde, the first wife of Dunkelfelder. As the Knight Commander had expected, the topic of the engagement was broached as soon as everyone had settled down with their tea. This was a matter of great importance for both of our duchies, so I made sure to listen as well while performing my duties as a guard knight. Lady Letzia was the granddaughter of the Archduke's previous first wife, and she had apparently moved from Jawonkel to become the next Ob. Prince Hildebrand moving to Arensbach as her groom was recompensed for the series of punishments following the Civil War, forcing the duchy to reduce its successors to archnobles. I was already aware from the circumstances surrounding Lady Magdalena's marriage, among other things, but Prince Hildebrand was being raised as a vassal, but I didn't expect the engagement to be settled this soon. The agreement was that Lady Letzia, who had both Arensbach and Jawonkel blood, would marry a prince with Dunkelfelder blood. This made it clear to all that Lady Letzia would become the next Ob. The royal family must have benefited greatly from unifying Arensbach and Dunkelfelder, the two duchies that managed old workstock. This shall bring peace and stability to the next generation, Ob Arensbach said, stroking his beard with visible relief. I feel as though a great burden has been lifted from my shoulders. 10 years had passed since he lost his successors in the Civil War. I can only imagine the panic he had endured as the Archduke. All had seemed well on the outside. Our archducal family was populous, and our duchy had suffered few casualties in the war, but he had wrestled with problems that nobody in Dunkelfelder could even imagine. However, this makes it that much harder to select a husband for my daughter Detlinde, Georgine said, her brow deeply furrowed. We would need to be someone who can serve as a temporary Ob in a dire situation. She had a daughter approaching her 6th year in the Royal Academy who could not secure a groom, while Lady Letzia's position was not yet solidified. It seemed that Arensbach had so few archducal family members that they wanted her to marry as well, broadening the family and providing support for Lady Letzia. To think that during this uncertain time, Lady Georgine must worry about the future of both her daughter and her duchy. I respected her attitude as the first wife of a greater duchy, but few would want to marry in the family of a female archduke candidate who stood absolutely no chance of becoming the next archduchess. It was possible that she might find someone within Arensbach, but she would be hard put to find an archducal family member from another duchy who could actually carry out the duties of an archduchess's husband. Most older students in the Royal Academy had already decided on a partner, and while women could simply enter into other duchies as a second or third wife, married men were completely removed from the equation. For a male Archduke candidate to marry into the family of a woman not due to be the next Archduchess, he would need to be either completely in love with her or mired by some circumstances that prevent him from having a normal marriage. Although I appreciated their struggles, I wasn't too concerned about them. This matter was none of my business. That is, not until Ob Ahrensbach named a potential candidate. Personally, I would welcome Lord Ferdinand of Ehrenfest as her groom. Do you know of him? Lord Ferdinand? I stared at Ob Ahrensbach in a daze, feeling the blood rush to my head. Never had a more genius idea been put forward. I had shared classes with Lord Ferdinand in the Royal Academy, and there was no denying his talent. He had come first in class almost every single year he attended. He was an exceptional scholar and unrivaled at dinner. His harpsichord playing was literally music to the ears, and he was by no means unsightly. That the Archduke had considered him for this position was truly commendable. That said, Lord Ferdinand was also a man of great misfortune. He had no mother and thus no support among the nobility, which the first wife of the previous Ob Ehrenfest had used to ostracize him. It was safe to say that his father had been his only blood relative, and after his death, those who envied Lord Ferdinand for his overflowing talents had forced him into the temple. Our encounter at the most recent introductory tournament had marked my first time seeing him in public in a decade, and given that the engagements of Archducal family members were announced at the Archduke Conference, it was clear to see that he was still without a wife. Is this not a tremendous opportunity to save him? We could free him from his mistreatment by getting him to Ahrensbach. Who said... Does he really look like he's been mistreated? Really? Just as I was clenching my fists in excitement, however, Ob Ahrensbach slumped his shoulders. He has everything we need, and my hope was to save him from his unfortunate abuse in the temple and have him see the light of day once more. The problem is, they were not particularly open to the suggestion. Ob Ahrensbach has sought to free Lord Ferdinand from the temple and give him an opportunity to fully use his talents, but Ob Ahrensfest did not decline on his behalf. But of course, Lady Georgine replied, I sincerely doubt he could speak his mind before the Ob. We suggested that Ob Ahrensfest leave his seat so that Lord Ferdinand could offer his true thoughts on the matter, but even that was refused. Lord Ferdinand ended up leaving after saying only a few words himself. It seemed that Ehrenfest intended to keep Lord Ferdinand chained up, to prolong his suffering. The very idea infuriated me. Dude, all you gotta do is talk to Ferdinand about this. You should have talked to him. If he was really like that, he really would have... never mind. I have been attempting to contact Lord Ferdinand ever since he came to my attention at the wedding between my niece and an Ehrenfest noble, Ob Ahrensbach explained. We learned that he was visiting for the introductory tournament and strove to speak with him personally, but he trailed off and shot Ob Dunkelfelger a look, the meaning of which I understood at once. Before those from Ahrensbach had managed to discuss things with Lord Ferdinand, we of Dunkelfelger had whisked him away to play dinner. This can't be. I'm responsible for Lord Ferdinand missing out on such a bright future. Oh my god, dude, talk to the guy! It had never been my intention, but it seemed that my actions had put Lord Ferdinand into a very unfortunate position. I wanted to shirk my guard duty and bemoan my foolishness, but then Lady Georgine's voice reached my ears. Dunkelfelger still communes with him, no? Could you perhaps introduce him to us? If you have any personal connections, I feel so terribly bad for the man. Indeed, Ob Ahrensbach said, I intend to ask the king to get involved in return for us embracing the sovereignty's investigation. If possible, I would appreciate Dunkelfelger's input as well. I was moved that Lady Georgine would try so hard to save Lord Ferdinand from his troubles, and I was grateful beyond words for Ob Ahrensbach's willingness to petition the king himself. This was a chance to bring some much-needed good fortune to Lord Ferdinand that I wasn't going to miss. I could hardly contain my excitement. Lady Sigonde, I must ask that you assist Ahrensbach, I declared. This is our second chance to save Lord Ferdinand. It would also make amends for Lady Magdalena dishonoring him all those years ago. Excuse me? What? Who's Lady Magdalena? Wasn't she the... Didn't they say that she was the Prince Hildebrand's mother? Lady Sieglinde glared at me with her red eyes. You were the one who dishonored him back then, she barked. You acted on your emotions without thinking ahead. First troubling Lord Ferdinand and then many others. Have you already forgotten how furious Lady Magdalena was? I don't know what to say. Back in our Royal Academy days, I had planned to rescue Lord Ferdinand from Ehrenfest by having him marry Lady Magdalena an archduke candidate from our duchy. The two had been both friend and foe when it came to forming dinner strategies. But they had not at all been in love. Ferdinand had simply wished to leave Ehrenfest. Still, Lord Ferdinand's living conditions had simply been too cruel to bear, and many of us Dunkelfolker knights had fervently wished to have such a strong dinner player in our duchy. In the end, we had asked the previous archduke to have him marry Lady Magdalena. We pushed and pushed and pushed, and eventually the Ob accepted, praising the idea as an opportunity to both rescue someone from misfortune and show the duchy's respect for good dinner players. And that's when things got bad. We had convinced the Ob, but not Lady Magdalena, who had erupted with anger when the previous Ob spoke to her about the marriage. She had then exploited the situation to her advantage, initiating a secret plot she had come up with to marry the man she loved, the fifth prince at the time, now the ruling king. Why should I throw my whole life away to save an archduke candidate from a backwater duchy, she had asked. There is someone else I wish to save. If, as you say, Lord Ferdinand is unhappy with this situation, then he need only use that intelligent head on his shoulders to eliminate the first wife of Ehrenfest. That he has not done so is his own choice. Do not wrap me up in the drama of a bottom-ranking duchy. She's not wrong. If he really wanted to get rid of that stuff, he should have gotten rid of Veronica, but obviously he was not going to, because that would have gotten him essentially killed. Because I'm sure that Veronica was just looking for any chance that he could make an attempt on her life and use it to get rid of him for good. So, yeah, best not to try that. Lady Magdalena's bonding to royalty had marked the end of the Civil War, and ultimately Dunkelfolker had benefited far more from this than it would have from her marrying a single archduke candidate from Ehrenfest. Lord Ferdinand had not been formally engaged despite all the probing into the matter, so that ordeal was concluded with a simple letter to Ob Ehrenfest. It was the natural decision to make as far as the duchy was concerned, but personally I had always regretted not being able to save Lord Ferdinand. This is why I wish to use the second chance to save Lord Ferdinand from Ehrenfest, I explained. Who says that he's not happy now? Hello, did you not know that Veronica is, locked up? Hello? That was his main tormentor. Well, then again, there were other nobles who were backing her, so of course he would still have enemies, but still, at least the main tormentor that was keeping him from, being at the castle and stuff was, gone. But, yeah, this whole thing is just fucked up. Lady Magdalena's marriage to King Traquil prevented Lord Ferdinand from leaving his duchy and is the reason he has spent the past 10 years in the temple. It will ease your guilt, but that is all, Lady Segonde said. Tell me, what do we gain from helping him? I racked my brain for an answer, then desperately grasped the final straw I could find. Lord Redmond. His daughter Clarissa intends to marry an Ehrenfest archnoble, so he wishes for Ehrenfest to establish more connections with the duchies surrounding it. If we can accomplish this by having Lord Ferdinand wed into a greater duchy... Again, Dunkelfelder has no interest in aiding individuals. The needs of the duchy outweigh such personal concerns, Lady Sigelnade stressed, shaking her head at my appeal. No matter how much I wanted to save Lord Ferdinand, I needed to retreat for now and seek out justifications she would agree with. I saluted, then promptly turned around. And that's how it is, I concluded, having brought all the other knights together in our duchy's dining hall to discuss my situation with Lady Sigelnade. Sieglinde. Whatever. It was beyond me to do this alone, but with everyone putting their heads together, a good idea would surely come. Despite it all, the benefit of the duchy still matters less to me than using the second chance to save Lord Ferdinand, I continued, then held up a cup of wine and declared, This time for sure we will free Lord Ferdinand. Our mission is to support Arensbach and ask that the king free him from Ehrenfest. So they're the ones responsible for also saying, oh, we need to save Lord Ferdinand. Blah, 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 blah. The knights raised their cups in a resounding cheer, then we all downed our drinks together. The burning sensation of the alcohol in our throats roused our spirits at once. Seeing as Prince Hildebrand will be marrying into Arensbach, we could argue that we'll want Lady Detlinde to marry someone we have influence over. One of my knight buddies said, also thinking about how to convince Lady Segonde. The recent dinner game against Lord Ferdinand had no doubt revitalized them. Right, Lord Ferdinand is not one to concern himself with power and status. He wouldn't so much as consider opposing Lady Letzia or Prince Hildebrand after marrying into Arensbach. He is educating Lady Rosamund as her guardian, so he should be able to serve as Lady Letzia's educator as well. Could we not get Jawanko on our side if we focus on that? It would be more reassuring to have not just Dunkelfelger but other duchies on this quest as well. I decided to follow up on his idea. We needed to spur Jawanko into action too. Given that the borders can't be redrawn, we share a fate with Arensbach and must strengthen the bond between our duchies, my friend noted. Lady Siglunday surely understands this. Arensbach says it cannot devote the necessary resources to hunting Fabies, but perhaps having Lord Ferdinand on hand would change this. In other words, we could slay Fabies together. We could even play Ditter. Calm down, Highshits. That would benefit you, not the duchy, remember? My argument needed to be grounded entirely in how this marriage would assist Arensbach and facilitate a closer relationship between our duchies. I nodded along with this explanation, all the while imagining myself slaying Fabies alongside Lord Ferdinand. Excitement stirred within me. It would be like being transported back to our golden years at the Royal Academy. If we can have Arensbach in our debt, then we will have secured the upper hand in negotiations for priority trade access to Lanzanov commodities. Ferdinand and Arensbach, we can get Ehrenfest trendy goods without having to rely on their underdeveloped trade routes. Oh my god!
Grab my bucket.
Get out.
Grab my bucket.
I said get out!
Grab my bucket.
Get out!
Grab my bucket.
I'm getting it, now get out! Go in the other room with it. Behind lays Rosemind's various inventions, you know. Yeah, we'll see about that. They ain't getting those. Really? That's our Lord Ferdinand for you. It was the peak of stupidity to constrain a man of such genius to the temple, which was why we had a resolve to fight for his freedom. Our collaboration had given life to ideas that I would never have come up with on my own, and our next course of action was now clear. If we could get support from Jawanko, then even Lady Segunde would agree to our proposition. Let's go, everyone. This time we will rescue Lord Ferdinand from the temple. He'll suffer in Ehrenfest no longer. Aye, aye, sir. Together we swore a solemn oath, and soon after our efforts were rewarded. At the end of the Archduke Conference, a united effort from several powerful duchies secured a royal order for Lord Ferdinand to be wed into Arensbach. I'm gonna smack these guys! I know they mean well. I know they do, but still. Let's see, 21 pages. 10 years of change. Eckhart, Justice, I have been abruptly summoned to a meeting with Arensbach, Lord Ferdinand announced. My apologies, but you must prepare to accompany me at once. It was a strange development, considering that he had deliberately not attended the Archduke Conference. Understood. We soon joined him on the teleportation circle, I as his guard knight and Justice while dressed as an attendant, and together we moved to the Ehrenfest dormitory in the Royal Academy. There we found Karstedt and a number of the Archduke retainers waiting for us. I have arrived at the order of Ob Ehrenfest, Ferdinand said. Karstedt, what in the world is going on? Arensbach wishes for you to marry into their duchy, and they won't budge no matter how many times we turn them down. Apparently they want an answer straight from the horse's mouth. It seemed that Arensbach's desire to assimilate Lord Ferdinand to their duchy had first blossomed when they saw him at Lampert's wedding. They had indirectly criticized Ehrenfest to no end, saying it was beyond cruel for us to have sent someone who had shown such tremendous promise at the Royal Academy to the temple right after his graduation. Utterly ridiculous, Lord Ferdinand muttered, frustrated to no end. Have they forgotten that they attacked Rosemine? I would rather not wed into a duchy that would do something so despicable to another archducal family. Do they not see the tragic irony in their cries of supposed cruelty? He briskly headed into the tea party room, offered the usual greetings, refused the marriage, and then left as swiftly as he had arrived. It seemed that he had never intended to discuss the matter with Arensbach. To think he would turn down such a generous marriage proposal. Would tightening our bonds with Arensbach not be massively advantageous? Lady Veronica is no longer here, so why not accept? Nobles of the former Veronica faction who knew about the proposal offered their highly absurd thoughts and opinions. Marrying to Arensbach, now of all times? Fools. We would have welcomed the idea 10 years ago, sure. Back then, it would have served as an escape from Veronica while simultaneously serving to slight her. She had always been so openly proud of the rich Arensbach blood coursing through her veins, so it would have wounded her greatly to see Lord Ferdinand move there instead of enduring the humiliation of the temple. Now, however, the idea held much less appeal. Veronica was already detained in the Ivory Tower, having been stuck there since her plot to destroy Lord Ferdinand and Rosemine completely backfired. Rosemine had also taken over as the High Bishop, and the temple had since become a far more comfortable place. The nobles who had persistently attempted to eliminate Lord Ferdinand were no longer in their high government posts, and my lord was treasured as a valuable pillar of support for the Archduke. His relations with others were becoming more tranquil, and the duchy was more or less at ease. And they wish for him to throw away this peace he's finally obtained for a miserable duchy like Arensbach? He has nothing to gain from this marriage. Who would dare push for it to begin with? My lord is satisfied with things as they are, and above all else, we have no reason to appease the Thorn Veronica faction, no matter how much they want cooperation with Arensbach. You lot killed Hildemarie, whatever. Now it's your turn to die. I spat internally, then returned to Ehrenfest with Lord Ferdinand. So, what happened with that? How did his wife die? That's what I want to know. I want more information on that. I was sure that Lord Ferdinand refusing Arensbach himself would settle the matter, but that was not the case. Soon he was soon summoned to the Royal Academy again to speak with the royal family. On paper, they intended to question him further about the rebel attack. Not even his guard knights were permitted to accompany him, much like when Rosemine had been interrogated after killing a Trinish in the Royal Academy. So we retainers had to wait outside. The actual contents of their discussion remained unknown to us, but it ended with the king decreeing that Lord Ferdinand would marry into Arensbach, all without so much as a word of permission from our Archduke Sylvester. It made absolutely no sense. I didn't know what deal they had struck with Arensbach, but several duchies had apparently come together and pressured the king about using this engagement to free Lord Ferdinand from the temple. You fools, what have you done? Seeing how extremely displeased Lord Ferdinand was infuriated me to no end. He personally refused Arensbach's archducal couple, and your response is to take matters even higher? Ridiculous. That stupid duchy can clean up its own mess. They're the ones who lost their successors in the Civil War. Why should we be mixed up in their garbage? I have to agree with Eckert on this one. However, no matter how foolish these responses were, or those responsible were, the king's word was absolute. Lord Ferdinand could only obey. It seemed that he did not wish to bring misfortune to Ehrenfest. Lord Ferdinand, could we perhaps kill the king and sweep all this under the rug? Do not state something so dangerous, Eckert. You are as short-sighted as always. I personally thought it was a good idea, but Lord Ferdinand turned it down. Of course it's not a good idea, dude! You want another civil war to attack Ehrenfest and kill everybody you care about? No! It was the same as when I had suggested that we assassinate Veronica, or as I remember saying to him at the time, that we send that waste to space after your father and avoid this banishment to the temple. Wow, Eckert, dude. I know you wanted to help him with dealing with Veronica, but that was not a smart idea. That would have gotten everybody up your asses because they would have known that Ferdinand was most likely responsible considering how she treats him. Dude, that would not have been a good idea in the long run. My only consideration was for my lord. As far as I was concerned, all those who opposed him were better off eliminated. The response I received was always that the ripple effect would catch too many other people in its wake, which was understandable enough, although I didn't much care about those consequences myself. Eckert, Justice, this is something of great importance we must discuss, Lord Ferdinand said, summoning us the night we returned. Come to my mansion. Upon our arrival at his estate, we were welcomed inside by Losfam, the lay noble tasked with managing it. His dark green, almost black hair was tied behind his head, and his green eyes were crinkled with a kind smile as he started pouring our tea. His presence meant that Justice rarely needed to do attendant work here. I am told that you were summoned to the Royal Academy, Losfam said, addressing Lord Ferdinand. You do not come bearing good news, I gather. I intend to explain as I drink. Understood. Please sit as well, Eckert, Justice, he continued, regarding us each with a troubled smile. Losfam was a retainer whom Veronica had assigned to Lord Ferdinand specifically to trouble him. Lay nobles had such paltry mana that they sometimes struggled even to use the magic tools necessary for attendant work. It was even harder during one's younger years, particularly when one first started the Royal Academy. Lay nobles already had to put up with their competency as retainers being called into question due to their smaller mana capacities. But on top of that, Losfam's very existence had served as fuel for those who would mock Lord Ferdinand. They would say, his retainers are incompetent failures, but that only means he's an incompetent member of the archducal family for failing to train them properly. Losfam was in a cruel position himself, which was why Lord Ferdinand had come to him with a request. For your own protection, engage in the abuse that Lady Veronica seeks. Prove to the world that you are by no means associated with me. To Lord Ferdinand, having another troublesome person around would not change much. Losfam was far from the only retainer assigned to him for the purpose of abuse, and the others among them would act cruelly toward my lord to earn the cursed woman's favor. Losfam declined his suggestion, however, saying that this would only confirm the notion that he was a failure of a retainer. But those words only made Lord Ferdinand suspicious. He considered Losfam a spy sent by the cursed woman, and said that he wouldn't trust him unless he gave his name. And he did. Yes, this is the other person that Lord Ferdinand has his name sworn. So we got 3 right here for him. He's got Eckert, Justice, and Losfam. And so Losfam had agreed to do just that, establishing that he was now to be trusted. He had overseen the estate when Lord Ferdinand entered the temple and had served as his workplace ever since Lord Ferdinand came of age and moved out of the northern building. As opposed to someone like Justice who had mastered scholar work, there was nothing Losfam could do in the castle. Eckert, Justice, Losfam, Lord Ferdinand said upon finishing his tea. He took out 3 objects, each in what looked like to be a white cocoon, and clinked them down to the table one by one. He had lined up our names swearing stones just like this on the day he had resolved to enter the temple. A shiver ran down my spine as his light golden eyes focused on each of us in order. I was racked with fear that my future was about to become so very tragically bleak. Is he trying to return them again? Yeah, he tried that when apparently he went to the temple. Because, he couldn't take them with him, so why have them name sworn to him, you know? And that was kind of dangerous anyway. Despite my heated exclamation on the inside, I said nothing. My lip was quivering and my teeth chattering so violently that I couldn't even speak. I couldn't help feeling as though my life were being carelessly tossed aside. But then the veil of Lord Ferdinand's mana that surrounded me suddenly intensified. The mana that bound me, which I usually didn't notice at all, was growing stronger. Eckert, Justice, I order you thus, come with me. So essentially, yeah, this is an absolute order that you cannot refuse. It was an absolute order from the Lord we had given our names to. If we agreed, the mana binding us would continue to be easily ignorable, but if we refused, we would die on the spot. Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole point of being name sworn, because if they give you an order and you refuse to do it, no matter what it was, you would die. And that was the danger of being name sworn. Despite my direct refusal of the engagement, Lord Ferdinand continued, it will go ahead because of the king's decree. This outcome is the result of the combined forces of many duchies. The circumstances seem anything but normal. All of our lives would doubtless be in danger, but even so, I ask that you serve as my arms and ears. I took a knee at once. His order was exactly what I had been waiting for. Understood, I shall accompany you wherever you go, always. Justice similarly accepted the order. Losfam, however, had not been addressed. Lord Ferdinand, please bring me as well, he said, staring at his stone with a ghostly white expression. I cannot bring someone without the strength to protect themselves in Arensbach. Upon hearing this, Losfam took in a sharp breath and started to tremble. This was the opposite of what had happened when Lord Ferdinand had gone to the temple. Back then, he had told only Losfam to remain as his attendant, since he could not live in the castle but couldn't manage his estate. He had then said that Justice and I should seek out other paths in life, as we were archnobles. Losfam, my order to you is as follows. Manage this estate and my remaining luggage until my engagement period ends and I no longer have need to stay in an Arensbach guest room. I thought I would be the only one to have my name returned, Losfam whispered, his voice oozing relief. I understood how he felt painfully well. I suppose I will need to organize your luggage into what needs to be brought and what will remain for now then. I intend to leave the bulk of my brewing ingredients with Rosemine, Lord Ferdinand said. There are many ingredients that her retainers would struggle to prepare themselves. I will need to teach them to make rejuvenation potions and have her dissolve the rest of her mana clumps in a jareve. He immediately started putting these plans into paper. It seemed that for some reason he was preparing Rosemine's matters rather than his own. There is no need to be soft on Cornelius, I said. What kind of garden cannot even prepare the ingredients their lord or lady needs? He would struggle if we were to cast him aside. Now, after providing him with ingredients for so long, no. Perhaps you could teach Cornelius and the others to gather the ingredients themselves. It will be done without fail. It was my duty to eliminate anything that concerned my lord, and to that end, I needed to train Cornelius and the others such that they could gather their ingredients on their own. I saw Ferdinand off as he went to his room to work, then began planning a schedule to train the guard knights myself. Eckert, we need to get our things ready too, Justice said. Lord Ferdinand leaving Losfam here means he expects Arensbach to be seriously dangerous. Might not want to bring anything you care too much about. I've yet to leave home, so I intended to keep my things with Mother, but you have your own estate. You'll need to clean that place up too. He was right that I still owned the estate I had moved into when marrying Heidmarie, whatever. And if we were moving to Arensbach, I would need to start clearing it out. Returning it would require some paperwork too. But the estate was filled with memories of Heidmarie, and the thought of losing them made me deeply uncomfortable. What if you gave the estate to Cornelius, who's marrying in 2 years or so, and get him to leave a room for you to use as storage? The weight of my shoulders lifted on the spot. Lenore was still underage, so their marriage wouldn't be for another couple of years at the very earliest. By then, I would no doubt have a home in Arensbach that I could move my things to. I appreciated that I could break this down into stages and clean things up slowly over time. I still wasn't ready to face it all at once. 1 or 2 years to settle into your new lives. That sounds like a long time. I wonder when I'll be able to rejoin Lord Ferdinand's side, Losfam said, wearing a dry smile. Justice crossed his arms with a sigh and stared out the window. There's no helping it. So many wills and objections are mixed together when it comes to this engagement that it's impossible to tell who's after what. The more cautious we are, the better. What do you mean, I asked. Do they want Lord Ferdinand and Arensbach specifically, or do they simply want him out of Arensvest? The situation changes drastically depending on the answer. We don't even have the intelligence necessary to figure it out. Justice said, clearly frustrated. He was wearing the same expression he had always worn back when Veronica was still around. I vowed to steel my resolve. No doubt we were being swallowed up in a massive current too large for any one person to sway. Eckert, your affairs are going to take longer to get in order than mine, right? Justice asked, changing the subject entirely. Better hurry up. I'm giving my estate to Cornelius, so I'm not in a rush. No, that's not what I mean. I'm divorced, so I'm free in that regard, but you're engaged. If you'll be bringing Angelica as your wife, then you'll need to get married this summer, and if you're canceling the engagement, then you need to speak with her about what happens next. Right, that's a pain. I really should get that sorted. I thought for a moment about bringing Angelica. Based on how she acted and trained at the temple, she wouldn't do anything except what she was ordered, and she would instinctively follow orders without questioning them whatsoever. She would be useful to Lord Ferdinand if we brought her. Angelica could prove fairly useful depending on how she's used, I noted. Oh ho, it's rare for you to consider other people useful, Eckert. We want as many people as we can trust there as possible, especially those who are good fighters. How about you marry her and bring her with us? I will have to ask her whether she has the resolve to go into enemy territory, I replied, nodding. No matter how skilled Angelica was, she needed to have enough determination. I decided to probe her about going to Arensbach at the next opportunity. Lord Ferdinand and Rosamund were busy talking in the hidden room, and Angelica had glued herself to the door. I called out to her. It was the perfect chance for me to pose my question. Angelica, as a loyal guard knight, I must accompany Lord Ferdinand to Arensbach without question. What will you do? What do you mean, she asked. You need to decide whether you'll marry me and come with me, or end our engagement and stay here. Your strength would be a valuable asset to us, but I intend to respect your choice. No matter how strong someone is, they won't be of any help if they don't want to be there. Angelica blinked at me several times in silence as if chewing over my words. Her expression didn't change at all, but Cornelius and Lenore both paled in contrast. Eckert, Angelica needs to get married as soon as possible, Lenore said. Given her age, canceling your engagement will be socially disastrous for her. Lenore's right, you shouldn't even be talking about— Shut up, Cornelius, I said, waving him off. No matter what Angelica decides here, Grandfather will make sure it doesn't impact her negatively in the slightest. He was the one who pushed for this engagement in the first place. It's not for us to worry about. But rather than drop the matter there, Cornelius tried to press further. He really was a bothersome little brother, and it was obvious that he didn't care about Angelica's reputation. His real concern was that Grandfather might order him to take her as a second wife. This isn't going to impact you at all, I assured him. Here, let me give you an excuse. You're already engaged to Lenore, so you're not in a good position to take an older woman like Angelica as your second wife. I'd expected that. Shut him up. I turned back to Angelica. Made your decision? Yes, she replied. I am Lady Rosamund's guard knight, so I will cancel our engagement and stay here in Ehrenfest. Her flat-out rejection took me by surprise for some reason, but I could tell that it was final. There wasn't even a trace of indecision in her deep blue eyes. I serve Lady Rosamund, not Lord Ferdinand. I see, that makes sense. You're completely right. You're Rosamund's guard knight. More important than marriage or reputation was the person you served and your loyalty to them. We may not have followed the same person, but we were exactly the same in what we treasured. I found Angelica's purity of spirit to be highly appealing. Rosamund has for good retainers, I see. I will do everything in my power to protect Lady Rosamund while she fights for Lord Ferdinand, Angelica said, looking toward the hidden room. Rosamund was no doubt compassionately ripping into Lord Ferdinand as we speak. I only ever followed orders, but my little sister always spoke up when there was something she didn't agree with. She had even fought to reduce Lord Ferdinand's workload out of concern for his health, taking on even the Archduke himself, so I was confident that she would continue to help him even after he departed for Arensbach. Oh, I see. Angelica's declaration had made me realize something. This wasn't the same as when Lord Ferdinand had entered the temple after all. We weren't the only ones worried about his engagement and frustrated with the situation. Unlike before, there were many people here trying to support him. It wasn't dangerous for him to show emotion, nor was it forbidden. Ehrenfest has changed. It actually managed to change. I truly believe that from the bottom of my heart. It was unfortunate that we couldn't stay here, but at the same time, I was hopeful. We would change this new land as well, ensuring that Lord Ferdinand could live there in peace, and I would eliminate all obstacles that tried to get in our way. Okay, Okay. The fish prep. Oh boy. Oh boy, this is so nuts. Okay, I'll get to work on everything, I'll edit everything, and I'll see y'all next time.